A series of shots changed the world.
It's official. As of just a few moments ago, the President of the United States is dead.
On November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy turned off of Houston onto Elm here in Dealey Plaza, entering a killing zone.
But who pulled the trigger?
It tells me that it's possible that although this is a very inferior weapon in many respects, it could have been done.
Now, we return to Dallas, Texas to recreate a national nightmare.
It was terrible. The bones and everything in tiny little pieces all over the car.
We scientifically search for evidence that might solve a mystery.
You can see the smoke right through the bill.
We follow in Lee Harvey Oswald's footsteps.
Ready, set, go.
Who fired the shots that killed a president?
Many of the people writing some of these conspiracy tales just don't know very much about the subject.
On Unsolved History. The most infamous car ride in American history. 5 people and a president. Today, only one person is left. Nellie Connolly, who was beside her husband, Texas Governor John Connolly, that day.
Everything was eerie and so unreal, so unbelievable and impossible, you would think. Why?
Nellie's memory of that last ride is crystal clear.
I turned around and I said, Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you. And he grinned, that wonderful grin he has. And then it was just a few seconds, and there was a loud noise. I saw his hands fly up to his neck, and then he just sunk down. The second shot went through John Connolly. He said, my God, they're going to kill us all, and then just fell over it. Blood all over him and all over his clothes. And I couldn't look back, but I heard Jackie say, they've killed him, they've killed my husband, I have his brains in my hand.
John Connolly survived his wounds. The president did not. The shots had barely stopped echoing in Dealey Plaza when the controversy began. Who had pulled the trigger? The official story had one man, Lee Harvey Oswald, shooting from this 6th-floor perch. Others believed bullets came from elsewhere in the plaza. From in front of the motorcade, from a team of gunmen, with Oswald as a witting or unwitting pawn in a great conspiracy. Nellie Connolly believes differently.
I think this crazy man, Oswald, was the killer. I think he was in the book depository by himself, and he shot 3 times, and he hit something each time. 1, 2, 3.
The key timeline revolves around the exact location and movements of Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine marksman, Soviet defector, and new employee of the book depository. Oswald's past has aroused much speculation. His movements on the afternoon of November 22nd, 1963, are even more controversial. For example, would Oswald have had 90 seconds to leave his sniper's perch, this 6th-floor window, drop the murder weapon, climb down 4 flights of stairs, and sit down in an employee lunchroom, in time to be confronted by an armed police officer? This same man would then be seen at his rooming house 30 minutes later, and 15 minutes after that, be nearly a mile away. There, it is claimed, he killed a police officer. Shortly afterwards, Oswald would be arrested, and then, the next day, murdered before he could be tried for his crimes.
He's been shot.
Case not closed. only disputed.
Public opinion surveys taken starting that weekend and for the next 40 years have always shown that at least 50% of American adults do not believe the lone gunman theory.
Do these timings of Lee Harvey Oswald's movements that afternoon really add up? If they don't, the assassination could not have occurred the way the official report says it did. Could a lone gunman have fired 3 shots accurately from that perch in 8 seconds or less? If Oswald acted alone in the assassination, did he have time to leave the 6th floor and be confronted by a Dallas policeman less than 90 seconds later? And would it be possible for Oswald to escape from the Texas Schoolbook Depository, travel to his Oak Cliff neighborhood 6 miles away, walk another mile, and kill a policeman on a quiet street just 45 minutes after the assassination? In order to find out, Unsolved History will turn the city of Dallas into a laboratory and determine if Oswald could have been where he said he was and done what he said he did within the given time frame. In addition, we will investigate other possible shooting locations. Was the book depository the only place where a gunman could have fired the fatal shots? In order to find these answers, Unsolved History assembled a crack investigative team. Gary Mack, curator, historian, 6th Floor Museum. Michael Yardley, sharpshooter. And David Perry, assassination historian. By combining their respective disciplines and bringing the science of the 21st century back to 1963, we can find some answers and shed new light on the Kennedy assassination. Our investigation begins at ground zero for the Dallas tragedy. The Texas Schoolbook Depository, where Lee Harvey Oswald worked.
One of the lingering questions is, could Oswald have gotten those 3 shots off in the time required? Everybody likes to volunteer their opinion on this subject. And we have a lot of hunters come through the 6th Floor Museum, and half of them say, oh, piece of cake, easy shot from here. And the other guys go, I don't see how the hell he did that.
We started with a simple premise, to determine if it was even possible to make 3 accurate shots within 6 to 8 seconds from the 6th floor sniper's nest. If it can be done, then the case for Oswald as the lone gunman remains. But if it proves impossible, then other gunmen must have been involved in a conspiracy to kill the president.
Whoa!
Our first challenge was to find a sharpshooter able to attempt this feat. Conspiracy theorists debate Lee Harvey Oswald's abilities with a rifle. But there is no debate about Michael Yardley's skills as a supreme marksman.
We're on a clay pigeon shooting range, and you may be asking, why is that relevant to the project? Well, because to shoot a clay pigeon, you've got to shoot ahead of the target to hit it.
The next problem was the weapon. Moments after the shots, police searched the Texas Schoolbook Depository. On the 6th floor, 190 feet away from the sniper's perch, hidden behind some boxes near the stairs, police found an Italian-made Mannlicher Carcano bolt-action rifle. A ballistic test showed that it had been recently fired. We needed the exact model for our demonstration. From the start, Michael considered the bolt-action rifle to be a problem. He would have to load or cycle the gun twice during the 6 to 8 second shooting time.
One of the issues is the cycling time. You start timing when I pull the trigger. We're on 4 seconds. And I'm going pretty quickly, and I'm not even attempting to aim. So there's been no allowance for recoil? No allowance for recoil, no allowance for aiming.
To be certain that our test could proceed, we bought 3 rifles and turned them over to gunsmith Frank Robinson. He refurbished them completely. mounting an authentic telescopic sight, and putting them in perfect working order. Since the 6th floor of the book depository is now a museum and Oswald's perch is sealed off to the public, we needed a staging area where we could recreate Elm Street and fire live ammunition. We found a site just 15 minutes from Dealey Plaza, a large open area known as the Levee by the Trinity River. With a few improvements, this would stand in for a section of Dealey Plaza. The lower road we designated Elm Street, as the cement structure was elevated exactly 26 feet. We needed to add an additional 34-foot tower to place the sniper's nest at 60 feet. On the same level as the 6th floor of the book depository. The target vehicle was another challenge. We decided to use a similar make and model as the presidential limo. As we are firing live rounds, it needed to be towed along the roadway at about 10 miles per hour. To check the speed of our target car, we brought in a radar device.
And as this vehicle is coming up the road, the speed will be displayed on this LED display.
Okay.
And that will show and verify that we're exactly at 10 miles an hour, plus or minus about a half a mile an hour at that speed.
As preparations continued, Michael practiced with the Mannlicher Carcano at some fixed targets. For this demonstration, we wanted to limit the area of the killing zone. The best existing evidence of the shooting, the Zapruder film, gives us a partial timeline. But there is a problem. You can only tell when the shooting ended.
You can't tell when the first shot is fired. The Warren Commission concluded that the first shot was probably fired as Kennedy's car came out from under this live oak tree that was along the motorcade route. From that point until the fatal shot is about 6 seconds. Now, the current thinking is that the first shot was fired before President Kennedy's car went under the tree. That adds another 2 to 3 seconds, which makes the shooting sequence somewhere between 8 and 9 seconds.
The Unsolved History team plotted the killing zone using this 1963 view from the 6th floor and transferred those measurements to our roadway. Finally, we needed a target for the demonstration. A cardboard form would provide the shoulders and neck. A melon would provide the head.
I'm thinking all the time about the distance, the time of flight of the bullet, and the angle.
Right.
Because all those factors will make a difference. And it's simple enough, actually, in this case, because by coincidence, the aim-off remains more or less the same for all 3 shots.
Well, if Oswald, let's say he was the assassin in this case, if he aimed his rifle in the general direction of body mass, could he got those hits?
We will see what happens. But I'm certainly coming over to the point of view that this is possible.
The stage is now set. A sharpshooter in the tower at 60 feet. A limousine moving along Elm Street at 10 miles per hour. Not since the FBI conducted a similar test in 1967 has this demonstration been attempted with such painstaking accuracy. Could Oswald have fired 3 shots with a bolt-action rifle in 6 to 8 seconds? We're about to find out, and an American tragedy is about to be recreated.
This program.
November 22nd, 1963. As the presidential limo moved down Elm, crowds lining the street were shocked when shots rang out.
Gentlemen, we have a bulletin coming in. We now switch you directly to Parkland Hospital and KBLX News Director Bill Hampton. The President of the United States is dead.
Life in America would never be the same.
We were full of the joy of living and the joy of working and helping, and I felt like that Jack and John could do a lot of things for this country and Texas. We owed the world and we were ready to charge. And I think they could have done good things.
Searching the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, the Dallas police discovered 3 spent shells and a rifle belonging to Lee Harvey Oswald. An investigation by the Warren Commission led to the conclusion that from this window, Oswald fired 3 shots that killed President Kennedy. But could these shots have been fired? To find some answers, Unsolved History decided to restage the Oswald shots using sharpshooter Michael Yardley and a measured replica of the Dealey Plaza location. Could Michael squeeze off 3 rounds from the Mannlicher Gargano, including a fatal shot within the 6 to 8 second time frame? The rifle was not always reliable, and Michael had been concerned about a misfire.
Hold it, stop.
The weapon jammed up because the cartridge failed to feed.
The firing range was ready, the target vehicle in place. Remember, Oswald had no rehearsal, so Michael's first attempt will be the key test. Mounted cameras are activated, and the Lincoln rolls forward. After hitting the melon on the first shot, Michael was able to fire 2 more accurate shots into the cardboard target in just 7.87 seconds. To verify our results, we tried 6 additional test runs, attempting to fire a total of 21 shots. This rifle misfired, preventing 2 runs.
Oh, it's malfunctioning again.
But when it worked, Michael had no trouble hitting the target.
Stop here.
So what do you think this tells you?
It tells me that it's possible, that although this is, a very inferior weapon in many respects, it could have been done.
But this test did provide one startling revelation about the reliability of the Italian rifle.
Misfire!
Out of 21 rounds attempted, Michael had 5 misfires. 23% of the time, the gun failed to fire.
Oh, God, it's horrible.
Imagine how history might have been different if Oswald's gun had misfired on his 3rd shot. But our demonstration was just beginning. Yardley could clearly fire the shots in time, but could he inflict the precise hits mentioned in the Warren report? 1 in the back and 1 in the head. Firing live ammunition at a human target would be impractical. That's when Unsolved History turned to laser technology. We decided to stage the same shots at night. A bright green laser would delineate the path of the bullet. Technicians mounted a laser onto a Mannlicher Gargano and altered the firing mechanism.
We've modified this rifle to accept a momentary push-button switch that's activated by the trigger.
Really?
So that when this trigger is pulled, the precise moment the hammer falls would have fallen on the bullet, it activates a shutter on the laser.
For a laser target, Unsolved History brought in a vintage 1962 Lincoln convertible, complete with actors representing the President and First Lady. For safety, we had the actors wear special goggles that would filter out the laser completely. In a few moments, the Lincoln rolled into the killing zone. Our laser flashed across the darkened sky. Michael learned some things about the sniper's position, even getting into the mind of the assassin.
So, Michael, what is it like using laser ammunition in the gun?
Well, actually, Dan, it's very interesting because you don't have the recoil to distract you. So you really get to understand the dynamics of the shot, the biomechanics of the shot, rather better than with live ammunition. And what I discovered there was that on the first shot, your body position's pretty convoluted. It's quite difficult. The second shot is a little easier, but it's still quite difficult. And strangely enough, it's the final shot, the distant shot, that's the easiest.
And the Warren Commission stated that it was the third shot that killed the president. Conspiracy theorists will argue that Yardley was simply a better shot than Lee Harvey Oswald. If so, Oswald needed just a little luck to change the course of history. But did the shot that killed President Kennedy have to come from the Texas School Book Depository? Could it have come from some other location? Now, Unsolved History goes underground to find out.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
There seems to be no end to the debates over that tragic day in Dallas when the president was assassinated. Since then, Americans have searched for answers to the question of who fired the fatal shots. Unsolved History has shown that even with an inferior weapon, like the Mannlicher Carcano, it was possible to fire 3 shots with accuracy at the motorcade from a 6th-floor window. But was that sniper's perch the only possible location? Conspiracy theorists have identified a number of places where gunmen could have been hiding, including the infamous grassy knoll, which overlooks the killing zone. But some researchers insist that shots could also have come from another angle, in front of the motorcade, from inside this storm drain. Could this be possible?
Well, there's enough room down in here. A person could be in here. Hand me that camera. Let me see if I can get a shot. Gary, go out to the final shot mark. I'll try to film it and also visualize if that could be done.
All right, I'll run out to where Kennedy was.
Okay.
To mark the approximate spot where President Kennedy was hit by the fatal shot, researchers have placed an X on Elm Street. If Dan in the storm drain can see Gary standing on the spot, a sniper would have had a shot.
No, I can't see him. There just isn't enough clearance to do that. But regardless, I'm at the extreme end, and there's no way you can see Gary. You couldn't do it. I don't know who thought of this theory, but this is ridiculous.
This seems to rule out the storm drain on Elm. But what about other storm drain locations?
There are 2 other sewer theories, and they both involve the triple underpass. And Ben, you've got the diagram there.
Okay.
The theory is that there was a shooter on the north end of the triple underpass up here, and a shooter on the, or maybe a shooter on the south end of the triple underpass.
Using laser technology, we tested the possible angles from both overpass locations. First, the south end storm drain. Our actors donned safety goggles, and the limo moved down Elm Street at 10 miles per hour. Michael Yardley opened fire from a position south of the underpass. There was a possible shot to the president's head, but there is a major problem with this theory.
Aerial photos taken that day show that area clearly, and there was no opening.
So it's put in much later?
Much later. So that sewer theory is out right away.
Next, our laser moved to the north end of the underpass. Everyone agrees that there was a storm drain here, but there are more problems.
We know from the pictures that there were 3 men standing on the middle of the steps there, so they were in the way.
Right.
And there's a tree that was there then. It's no longer there now, but you know, when you're scanning across the area, the trees get in the way. And the line along the fence is such that you'd only have a fraction of a second to even find President Kennedy and find him in the motorcade.
These storm drain locations are problematic, but they both offered an angle for the fatal shot. Could a gunman have simply stood there?
There were railroad employees up on top of the triple underpass, and they were all known to each other, and they all insisted there were no strangers up there, but yet the theory persists, and I don't know what one could do about it.
Laser beams define a possible trajectory, but witnesses and obstacles in the terrain conclusively eliminate these storm drain theories.
That's the thing about the Kennedy assassination. You can have your doubts about parts of it, but there's no hard evidence of anyone other than Lee Harvey Oswald.
And one of the controversies swirling around Lee Harvey Oswald concerns the timeline of his movements after the fatal shots. Here are the facts. At 12:30 p.m., shots rang out in Dealey Plaza. Dallas police officer Marion Baker headed immediately to the Texas Schoolbook Depository, parked his motorcycle, and entered the building looking for anyone suspicious. He met the building manager, Roy Truly, and they searched together, racing up the northwest stairs. Then, through this vestibule window, Baker noticed Lee Harvey Oswald in the second-floor lunchroom. Baker acted immediately.
He went into the lunchroom and with gun drawn, and Oswald turns around, and Baker goes up to him with his gun in his belly. And by that time, the manager, Truly, comes in and says, well, he's okay, he works here. So the cop turned and left.
This encounter occurred within 90 seconds after the assassination. Oswald's countenance is critical.
And there wasn't anything about Oswald's demeanor that made him suspicious, as it turns out. He wasn't out of breath, he wasn't, huffing and puffing, he didn't act nervous, he just acted surprised, as anyone would with a gun in their stomach.
There are two possible explanations for this surprising encounter. Number one, it took Oswald less than 90 seconds to leave the sixth-floor sniper's nest and descend 4 floors to the lunchroom without being out of breath. Or number two, implied in Oliver Stone's movie, JFK, Oswald was in the lunchroom the entire time, while someone else killed the president. Unsolved History decided to test which scenario was correct. The 6th floor of the former Texas Schoolbook Depository has been turned into a museum, so we had to find a similar location. An exhaustive search of the warehouse district in downtown Dallas turned up a suitable replacement, built in the same era.
It's amazing how this warehouse looks so similar to the Texas Schoolbook Depository.
The first time I came up and took a look at this whole floor, I really couldn't believe it. It's almost the same dimensions and has the same look as the 6th floor at the Texas Schoolbook Depository.
We plotted our route from photos taken shortly after the assassination.
Here,
researcher Dave Perry set up a course that would exactly duplicate the distance Oswald traveled on the 6th floor.
Okay, but in the movie JFK, they show Oswald running. Was he running at any time during this?
Well, that's what our little evaluation is going to find out. We'll find out if Oliver Stone was right. We'll find out if the Warren Commission or the Secret Service was right.
Dave, how does this...
The wooden stairwells, 9 steps each, 2 flights per floor, closely match those in the Texas Schoolbook Depository. After 4 flights of stairs, a doorway opens onto the 2nd floor.
So what we have here is the mock-up of the 2nd floor. And the lunchroom area would be off in this direction. Right. This area here would be the vestibule, okay, where Marion Baker saw him through the small glass frame, and Oswald was headed away from Baker in the direction of the lunchroom.
You can see in this film made by the Secret Service in 1963 that Officer Baker could have seen Oswald through the window in this vestibule door. Next, we needed to find someone who fit the physical characteristics and conditioning of ex-Marine Lee Harvey Oswald. 23-year-old Richard Black is a fitness instructor. His height, 5'9", just like Lee Harvey Oswald. His weight, 150 pounds, another match for Oswald. Now, we are ready to start the race. Will our Lee Harvey Oswald be able to walk to the 2nd floor lunchroom in less than 90 seconds? Will he be sweating and winded, or calm, collected? Unsolved History is about to find out.
Go ahead and get into position right over here.
It is time to walk in Lee Harvey Oswald's footsteps.
Stand by, Dave, to start the timer.
A path no one has taken in almost 40 years.
Go.
Tonight on
After a 10-month investigation, the Warren Commission published their findings about the assassination of President Kennedy. They concluded that there had been no conspiracy. Lee Harvey Oswald had acted alone. Researchers began to question their findings. The subsequent debate comes down to one question. Was Lee Harvey Oswald the lone gunman? Or were there other snipers in a grand conspiracy? If one detail, for instance, Oswald's whereabouts immediately after the shooting, can be disputed, then the entire fabric of events may unravel. Only 90 seconds after the last shot was fired, from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, Dallas police officer Marion Baker saw Oswald through a vestibule window at the building's 2nd floor lunchroom. Oliver Stone and others insist that Oswald would have had to run full speed, stopping to hide his rifle where police would discover it a few minutes later, and then descend 4 flights of stairs to arrive there in time, sweating and out of breath. Unsolved History set out to put that assumption to a test. How fast could a 23-year-old physically fit Oswald arrive at the lunchroom? Our race will begin as the last shot is fired from the 6th floor window.
Over here.
To ensure accuracy, we placed obstacles to duplicate the stacked boxes that would have blocked some of Oswald's path on that afternoon.
I was on Simmons Freeway earlier, and even the freeway was jam-packed with spectators waiting their chance to see the president as he made his way towards the Trade Mart.
Stand by, Dave, to start the timing.
Here we go in 3, 2, 1.
Go.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
Richard's heading down the side of the building.
There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street, there by the Simmons Freeway.
Making his first turn, coming across the width of the building. The Mannlicher Carcano is down, and Richard is in the stairwell.
Several police officers are rushing up the hill at this time. Stand by just a moment, please. Something has happened in the motorcade route. Stand by, please.
He's on the 2nd floor. He's headed for the vestibule, and he's in. Stop.
So Richard, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Are you winded?
No, not really. Heart rate's up a little bit, but that's about it.
You want to know what your time was?
Yeah, hit me.
It was a little over 48 seconds.
Unsolved History has convincingly shown that Oswald could have fired 3 shots and arrived at the 2nd floor lunchroom in well under the time allotted. Oswald's actions after he left the Texas School Book Depository are also controversial. For on the heels of the presidential assassination, there was another killing in Dallas, one that Oswald was arrested for. But some people believe that he was never at the crime scene. Researchers can confirm Oswald's movements for the first 30 minutes after the assassination. Just before 1 p.m., he walked into his boarding house at 1026 North Beckley in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas. Housekeeper Erlene Roberts saw him leave moments later. No one saw him for the next 15 minutes. Then, at approximately 1:15, nearly a mile away, Officer J.D. Tippett stopped to question a stranger. For unknown reasons, this man shot the police officer, then fled the scene. 35 minutes later, Oswald was arrested and soon charged with the murder. If Oswald was able to arrive at 10th and Patton in 15 minutes, then he could have shot Officer Tippett. But some theorists claim these times don't add up. That in those 15 minutes, Oswald could not have traveled the 9/10 of a mile. from point A, the boarding house, to point B, where Tippit was shot. And if Oswald couldn't walk that distance within this time frame, then someone else must have shot the officer, and maybe the president.
Well, and as you realize, Gary, I'm one of those people that always believed that he couldn't make it in time. So this way, we're going to have an accurate picture of what went on.
All right, let's do the test and find out.
Okay.
All right.
We decided to restage Oswald's presumed movements from the still-standing boarding house to the crime scene to determine if he could have arrived without assistance and perhaps the actual path he took. For this demonstration, we researched the clothes he wore that day and even gave him a .38 caliber revolver.
Make sure it's unloaded. It is.
It is.
To carry along the route.
All right, Dave, what's next in this test?
We will break our walk into two parts. The first, to the corner of Beckley and Davis, and the second, by two routes mapped by the testimony of contradictory eyewitnesses.
Okay, I want you to get on your mark and start walking briskly. Ready, set, go. He will head up Beckley Street, and we'll get in and follow him, eventually pass him in a golf cart, so that we will be waiting for him when he reaches the next checkpoint.
And how fast should Richard be walking?
Well, the Warren report indicated that they were looking for somebody who was walking briskly.
In our first lay, we will assume that Oswald took the quickest way between his boarding house and the corner of Beckley and Davis. No eyewitnesses contradict this assumption.
3, 2, 1, stop.
Our Oswald's time for this first segment is 5 minutes and 54 seconds. At this point on the map, Oswald was just 4 blocks from the Tippit shooting scene. From here, there are 4 ways to get to the murder location of 10th and Patton. 2 of these routes are ruled out, as reliable witnesses along the way do not report seeing Oswald.
There was a witness by the name of Helen Markham who lived just off of Patton.
Although nobody witnessed the first part of Oswald's journey, there are 2 witnesses who did see his final approach to the murder scene. But the testimony of these witnesses is contradictory. One witness saw Oswald walking westbound on 10th. And in order for him to be where this witness says he was, he would have had to walk this route.
3, 2, 1, start.
Could this route have been covered in the approximately 15 minutes the Warren Commission says he had?
On the day of the assassination, a lot of the traffic was off the streets because everybody was in watching television or listening to the radio because they'd heard about the assassination of the president. 3, 2, 1, stop.
Adding up the maze of this indirect route gives us a total of 16 minutes and 11 seconds.
That won't work.
It's a tough fit, if it fits at all.
If Oswald took this indirect route, he may not have been where the Warren Commission said he was, doing what they said he did. Is this the loose thread that causes the official story to unravel?
3, 2, 1, start.
We need to do one more test. Every detail of the events surrounding the assassination of President Kennedy has been studied and debated. The question of Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone or as part of a grand conspiracy is based in part on a critical timeline of his movements after the assassination. At 1 p.m., he is observed leaving his boarding house at 1026 Beckley. 15 minutes and nearly a mile away, Officer J.D. Tippit is murdered. Unsolved History decided to carefully document Oswald's walk through Oak Cliff and determine if he could have arrived at the murder scene.
5 minutes and 47 seconds.
The first route we selected supports the testimony of an eyewitness who saw Oswald walking westward on 10th, just prior to the shooting of Officer Tippit. But our clock time of 16 minutes and 11 seconds would not have allowed Oswald to arrive at the scene by the time Tippit was killed. If If the eyewitness who forced us to construct this route is correct, the case for Oswald as a lone gunman begins to fall apart. Either someone helped him arrive in time, or someone else shot Officer Tippit. But there was another eyewitness, Helen Markham, and she was closer to the crime scene. Her testimony stated that she saw Oswald moving east, not west, on 10th. Is there a route that could place Oswald on this path towards Tippit's final location?
So what we need to do to test this is take the Crawford route, right?
Correct.
Okay.
This route takes Oswald along Davis for half a block, then up Crawford to 10th, then over to Patton, where he is confronted by Officer Tippit.
3, 2, 1, mark. I've never done it this tightly.
Okay.
And more in my mind is the possibility that this can be done. 3, 2, 1, stop.
The total time it took our Oswald to walk from the boarding house to the corner of 10th and Patton is 11 minutes, 10 seconds.
Plenty of time to...
Plenty of time for him to make it to this location in time to have the shooting take place.
You bet.
So another potential myth has been dispelled here today.
There are still unexplained questions surrounding the killing of Officer Tippit, not the least of which being the discrepancy between the eyewitnesses who saw him walking in 2 different directions. But our test shows Oswald could have arrived at the murder scene unaided.
I've always been one of the ones that felt that Oswald could not have made it from the rooming house down at Beckley under any circumstances. So, at least to my own satisfaction and a little bit to my own frustration here, I have shown that he can make it well within the allotted time for the shooting to take place.
What surprises me is after 40 years, this is the first time this kind of time check has ever been done in front of a camera. It's important to check out stuff, not just accept the Warren Commission, not just accept the conspiracy folks. Check it out.
Unsolved History's new investigation has re-established a sequence of events. Using a Mannlicher Carcano, Oswald could have fired 3 shots, including a fatal shot at the presidential motorcade within 8 seconds. There could not have been any gunmen in any storm drain locations. Oswald had adequate time to get from the sniper's nest to the second-floor lunchroom and be confronted by a Dallas policeman. And, walking briskly along the right route, Oswald would have had no trouble arriving at the Tippit murder scene within the given time frame.
The conspiracy believers always say that they're searching for the truth. But oftentimes, if the answer is not what they want, they get very upset. And they think someone's covering up or making up stories.
No matter what our conclusions, conspiracy adherents can and will point out discrepancies in our tests or in the accounts of the assassination that we used as baselines for our investigation. For these reasons, we can only make one statement with certainty. There may never be a definitive version of events that will satisfy everyone.
There's nothing wrong with questioning aspects of the Kennedy assassination, but people need to use their common sense. The country is not loaded with liars and connivers and cheaters and cover-up artists.
What happened in Dallas was so poorly explained that America now mistrusted the government. It now led to a cynicism that it didn't have before.
But there is one aspect of this event that everyone can agree on. The tragedy that occurred in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, broke America and the world apart. Those pieces can never be put back together in the same way.
They often say in times of crisis, in our nation's past, that there was a loss of innocence. It was never more true than on a weekend in November in 1963.
My husband always said how strange it was that a man with a $15 gun and a scrambled egg brain could kill the President of the United States.
You can get the Unsolved History program you just saw on home video. From ballistics to bone analysis to geomagnetic imaging, forensic science is now putting history to the test. For only $19.95 plus shipping and handling for each video, you can stay on technology's cutting edge. Have this episode of Unsolved History, nearly an hour in length, delivered to your door. To order, go to discovery.com or call 1-800-4...